Aloha, como mai, and welcome aboard. You're on board with Just Cruising, our weekly podcast that's all about the world of travel. I'm your host, Larry Jackson, co-owner of Cruise Holidays of Vieira, and I'm glad you could be with us. We're recording this morning, Thursday, December 3rd. And the title of this podcast is The Long Road Just Got Longer. If you'll recall, maybe those of you who have listened to us in the past, a few weeks ago, I recorded a podcast entitled The Long and Winding Road, and I was talking about the road to getting back to sailing. And the reason I called it The Long and Winding Road was we had just received the CDC's conditional sale order, and I had outlined all the details of that conditional sale order and how I thought that the provisions were, although everybody was excited about having some sort of path back to sailing, I felt that it was going to be a very long path because of the restrictions that temporary sailing order had been, the CDC had placed in there that was going to make it very difficult for us to resume cruising in the very near term, and that's what's turned out to be the case. So first of all, this week I want to bring you up to speed on the suspensions of sailings that we've had, many of which were announced last week just after Thanksgiving or yesterday, December 2nd. So let's just bring you up to speed. Norwegian Cruise Lines Holdings, which includes Norwegian Cruise Lines, Oceania, and Regent Seven Seas, announced that the Norwegian Cruise Lines portion, they had suspended all sailings through February 28th of 2021. For Oceania and Regent, those sailings were canceled through March 31st of 2021. There were some selected Norwegian Cruise Line sailings scheduled or canceled in March of 2021. Most notably, one that's going to impact us is the Pride of America from Hawaii that has been suspended through the end of March. At the same time, just almost simultaneously, Royal Caribbean announced that they would be suspending all sailings through February 28th. In Australia, they have suspended or canceled all sailings through April of 2021. Celebrity Cruises also had the same suspensions and cancellations. Disney Cruise Lines last week, just before Thanksgiving, announced that they were canceling all cruises through January 31st. And we had a Disney cruise scheduled for January. Linda and I were going to take that, Linda being the co-owner of Cruise Holidays of Vieira. So that now makes our 8th cruise that has been canceled personally just for us. And many of these were groups we were escorting with our clients. That's the 8th cruise that's been canceled since all of this began back in March. Previously, Princess and Holland America had announced their suspensions through the end of March, so they were a little ahead of the gun there. And one other notable thing, even though it's not a suspension of sailings, all the major cruise lines have announced that they will not be selling or booking any cruises that are longer than 7 days through the end of November of 2021. And this is because in that conditional sale order, the CDC is not allowing basically any cruises over 7 days that are departing from U.S. ports. So until we get a little bit more clarification on that, then nobody is either selling or booking, and in some cases they've even stopped scheduling cruises through November of 2021. And that's about it. So if you'll recall, when we did the podcast about the CDC's conditional sale order, we said that we felt that a lot of the provisions in there were going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish. So what I believe has happened is that after everybody got over the euphoria of not having a no sale order and getting a conditional sale order, they actually read the thing and they found out how bad it was. On top of that, there were many provisions in there that would be outlined later, and they haven't been outlined by the CDC, so we don't even know, we don't even have all the details of it. After that, then the news of the vaccine came out, and I believe, my personal opinion only, is that the cruise executives said, you know what, this is going to be way too expensive to do these simulated cruises to jump through all these hoops, and then even after we do that, the CDC might not let us go back to sailing anyway, because this is really more politically motivated than anything else, and less to do with the health of the nation. So they said, let's wait and see what happens with the vaccine, how fast it can get out, how many people can be vaccinated, and maybe that will quell the pandemic, get it off the front page, and then we'll be able to go back to sailing again. So I believe that's where we're at. Here's an interesting article I found this week. CDC ignores crowded airports while holding cruise ships to double standard. The CDC believes going on a cruise ship is among one of the riskiest forms of travel during the global health crisis, but has turned a blind eye to air travel and the complete lack of testing, distancing, or protocols to stem the spread of the COVID-19. Over the weekend, this is last weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, the CDC raised its warning about going on a cruise ship to the public to the highest level possible. Meanwhile, Thanksgiving holiday travel is beginning to peak, and the CDC has held airports and airlines to no strict protocols. The double standard perfectly exemplifies how cruise lines are being unfairly targeted by the CDC, while air travel has faced no such restrictions despite being chiefly responsible for the spread of COVID-19 from continent to continent and country to country. How did COVID get to the United States to begin with? It came from China, not on a cruise ship. Okay, the Diamond Princess didn't bring it in here. And so they note in this article, Sunday was the busiest day at airport checkpoints since March 16th, and the AAA expects up to 50 million Americans to travel. In the executive summary from the last no-sail order, the CDC director warned cruise ship travel should not occur because it would facilitate the spread of virus if unrestricted cruise ship passenger operations were permitted to resume. Infected and exposed persons disembarking cruise ships would place U.S. Coast Guard, healthcare workers, port personnel, and communities at a substantial unnecessary risk. The same concern regarding cruise ship travel is affecting air travel without any of the safeguards. So, a lot of hypocrisy here. And getting back to the CDC and what I consider the politicalization of this whole cruise line problem, I want to share with you an editorial that I found in the Norfolk Daily News by a fellow named Michael Shannon. And I'm just going to read you a portion of his editorial. Agency. Under no circumstances attempt to enlist the help of President Trump. Thinking the president has any control over federal agencies is dangerously naive. If you don't believe me, believe the cruise ship industry. Axios, that's a fairly left-wing news media, reports, quote, Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control, was overruled when he pushed to extend a no-sail cruises into next year. Axios terms this legitimate action on the part of elected officials the undermining of Redfield. The real question is, how can one undermine the director of an agency with a monopoly on Fu Manchu test who produced a faulty test for the virus during a worldwide pandemic? If you remember when the CDC first issued their test for the flu, for the faults, how is it possible to, back to Michael Shannon's article or editorial, how is it possible to besmirch the reputation of the man who brought us 15 days to flatten the curve, not to mention a wear a mask hokey pokey? But Axios soldiers on. According to these leftist stenographers, this matters because, quote, cruise ships were the sites of some of the most severe early coronavirus outbreaks before the industry shut down in March. Only that's not true. On Princess Plague ship, Diamond Princess, there were a total of 3,711 passengers and crew on board. After the disease was detected, the ship was put under an enforced quarantine. The general consensus is the so-called quarantine was a FEMA-sized disaster. Wired quotes Kentaro Iwata, an infection control specialist at Kobe University, who said the effort violated all infection control principles. Yet the aftermath wasn't a disaster. And he goes on to point out that the infection rates and the death rates and everything else were much lower than what we're experiencing in the United States as a whole. When Trump told Redfield to stand down, the CDC in essence said, you may have the president's permission, but you don't have ours. So what happened was, if you recall back to October, we had a no-sale order that was set to expire on October 31st. The CDC came in and said, we want to extend that to February. Vice President Pence and the coronavirus task force said, we don't think that's necessary. We think the no-sale order should be lifted immediately. So the CDC said, well, we're not going to do that, but we'll give you this temporary conditional sale order that extends through November of 2021, and then you can do all these protocols that I just outlined for you, and then you can get back to sailing. Well, that in effect extended the no-sale order through the end of February, as I've just relayed to you that we've had all these cruises, because nobody can get this stuff going before February. So all they did was take away a no-sale order that had a date, an actual termination date on it, and give us an open-ended one that has no date until the end of November. So that's in effect what they did. Cruise Critic noted that the CDC lifted its long-standing no-sale order, but after a weekend of leafing through the new rules, Cruise Critic staffers and longtime readers have more questions than answers, which should be a lesson to naive business. The catch is there are no details explaining the rules and procedures for meeting any of these mandatory requirements. Every time Cruise Critic asked for clarification, CDC bureaucrats repeated the same mantra, this will be outlined in future technical instructions and orders. This makes it impossible for cruise ship lines to plan ahead and prepare ships and crew for the experience of sailing on a hospital ship. This means Redfield's edict banning any cruises until February 2021 is essentially still in effect, in defiance of Trump's orders. Passengers are even more in the dark as to what cruising is going to look like. So that's pretty much it as far as the CDC is concerned. I want to turn your attention to all of you who have sailed on Royal Caribbean before and are now Crown and Anchor members. Royal Caribbean is offering through the end of December 2020, if you book a cruise, and it's basically all the cruises they have listed so far in the deployment, in other words, what's been released, going on a 7-day cruise but booking a 4-day cruise, so you can get double points. Now, this is especially important for those of you who may be close to another status, such as Diamond or Diamond Plus or things like that. There are, in each of the Crown and Anchor levels, there are different amenities for the different levels. So you may be close to one of these next levels. And what I would urge you to do is let's go ahead and start looking at the sailings. Maybe we look out till October, November, December of 2021, where we can be a little bit more positive that the sailings are actually going to happen, and go ahead and make your bookings. Now, what makes this even better is because all of these bookings that you make will fall under the Royal Caribbean's Cruise with Confidence policy, which allows you to cancel your reservation up to 48 hours before you're sailing. You won't get your money back, but you will get a future cruise certificate. So you can make a reservation with using the non-refundable deposit, and then if you have to cancel or you change your mind or you want to move it around, then you can do all of that with the Cruise with Confidence. You can get your non-refundable deposit back in the form of a future cruise certificate. Also, the Cruise with Confidence has another provision called the Best Price Guarantee, which means that any time before you sail, if the price of your cabin or what you booked or the offer that you booked goes down, the Royal Caribbean will either refund your credit card if you've already made the payment and it's prior to final payment, or if it's after final payment, they will give you an onboard credit. So I would urge you to give us a call at Cruise Holidays of Vieira before the end of December. Let's go ahead and plan a cruise for November or October of 2021, or maybe even the summertime of 2021. I will also urge you to do this because as we have more and more cancellations, more and more people are getting future cruise credits. They are then shifting those over to the remaining sailings in 2021, and they're getting fewer and fewer. So our inventory is going down as we have canceled cruises. So your selections are not as good as they're going to be, are not as good as they were, and as more and more people are rebooking. So now I think is the time to go ahead and start booking for 2021. Later in the year, we're fairly assured that we'll hopefully, even if all of the else fails with the CDC, we'll have the vaccine. We'll have enough of it that we can get vaccinated, and that will satisfy the CDC to let us back on our ships. So again, Royal Caribbean, Crown and Anchor Society members, you can get double points by booking a cruise before December 31st, 2020. For all of the sailings in 2021 and 2022 that have currently been released and that haven't been canceled. And we would be happy to help you with that at Cruise Holidays of Vieira. Please give us a call at 321-242-1331 or go to our website, justcruisinvieira.com. Just cruising with no G, Vieira, V-I-E-R-A. We do have a bit of limited office hours right now, but we are open. If you live here in the Melbourne area and you'd like to come in and see us, we're welcome to have you come in. We have a no mask policy here. We're anti-mask. We're not maskers, and so you be free to come in and sit down and talk with us, and we would love to see you. And let's get started. Let's start thinking about, now is the time. I think pretty much most of our bad news has happened, and we can start anticipating getting back to cruising in 2021. And with these double points, that makes it even better. Well, I think that's about going to do it for us this week. Thanks again for tuning in.